I'm Brian Scheich. I'm the Bear Research Coordinator. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Southwest Florida Bear Project. We have a project to look at the demographics of bears in Southwest Florida. There are three main points of data that we need to do growth modeling. We need the survival rate of females. That drives most of the growth. We want to know the litter size to know how many cubs are being introduced into the population every year, which means we have to go into the den while they're still with their mother and count them. And then we also want to know the survival rates of the cubs. And those three pieces of data are fed into a matrix model, which is essentially a big equation that helps us estimate what the population looks like that particular year, which will also tell us how fast the population is growing. One aspect of that larger project is to look at the cubs. To get the cub survival, we have to first locate them. We do that by using the GPS collar that the mother bears wear. And that data is sent to a satellite, and so we can tell when she goes in to the den and stops moving around, so we know she's actually denning. And we get a cluster of locations over a few months, and that tells us roughly where they are. And then we can get close enough and listen to a very high frequency radio signal that collar also puts out. We pick a time at the very end of the denning season when we know the cubs would be larger and the mothers are more attached to them. We creep into this very dense thicket to try to get as close as we can. There's a lot of variability in the den habits that they use. Some are in trees and some are on the ground. Some are in excavations in the soil that they dig out. Some are in very thick areas you have to crawl through to get there. Some are a little bit more open. There are a lot of individualities to bears, and be able to compare the denning habitat from one part of Florida to another part is very useful. And once we find where the den is, we can gently push her away. She doesn't really want to chase us away or leave too early, but once we get so close and there's a few people around, they get a little bit nervous about us and they walk off. Come on, Mama.
Hey, Bear.
Come on.
Hey, Bear. Hey, Bear.
Hey, Bear. There she goes. I don't know how far she went, but she went.
Okay, great.
Ooh, there's three. We want to take those cubs and bring them out. We're going to get to a place just nearby where we don't have to worry about smashing down all the vegetation and changing what the den looks like. And we do several things once we have the cubs in hand. The main data point we need for the estimate is the litter size. So we count them, how many males and how many females we get. But while we have them, we want to get as much data off them as we can. So we measure their ear length.
His right ear is 49 millimeters.
Some lengths of their hair on the top of their head, which is an equation that will tell us their age. And that's really useful for bear management to know how old bears tend to be when they find them in other places or if they get orphaned. We would like to know if our subpopulations vary from each other on typical birth dates and den entrance and exit dates, and so that's nice to know. We also look at whether or not they have a blaze and a general health assessment. We do feel their teeth to see which teeth have erupted, and that's just another way for us to help get an idea of how old they should be. We weigh them, and that gives us a general idea how much cubs are expected to weigh at that time.
He's 2.9 kilograms.
2.9 kilograms.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
We put a pit tag in it, which is the same ones that your pets might get. If they happen to get captured as an adult or a yearling, either as a conflict bear or if they get killed by a car, we can find out if it's from this area. And while we have them, we measure the neck size and their body length and other morphometrics, just shapes of their body, just so we can compare it to other studies if we need to. We collect a tuft of fur because it's really archives well, it lasts a long time. And if we did have a study for stable isotopes to see what they eat or genetics we might need to do on them, we wouldn't have to go back and capture bears all over again because we've already got the data archived. Yeah, once we're done with the cubs, try to do all of that work within 45 minutes if possible. And then we put them back, we crawl back in, put them there. There's always somebody listening for the radio signal to hopefully hear the mother nearby. Sometimes they're actually circling us so we can see them, or we can hear them walking in the bushes. They're pretty defensive of cubs, but not aggressive towards us. So that's usually a good sign for us. If we can hear her nearby, we know that she's a really good mother and will stay by the cubs. And that happens a few times where as soon as we put the cubs back, we see the mother, we back off, and we know she's immediately back there. That's the perfect situation. This year, because we didn't put any transmitters on cubs, what we did is put game cameras around the den. What we just want to know is that the mother came back and the cubs are safe again. We can see the images over a cell signal without actually going back to check on the cameras. Over the 20 years of doing cub exams, we've worked up something around 100 litters, and very safe process overall the way we've been doing it. But it is nice to have that confirmation. So the cameras do help a lot. And then the radio signal on the mother will tell us how long she stays in the den. She usually stays about middle of April, give or take a few weeks, and that give or take is based on the birth dates of the cubs. That is also often around February 1st, give or take 2 weeks on either end. Whenever they're ready to leave the den on their own, we go back and get the cameras then, so we just let the bears do their own thing once the cubs are back. And then we can just monitor the mother with the GPS collar to get her survival rate. But again, by and large, the females come back, reunite with the family, and then they go about their business as if we had been there. And that's what we really want, is to continue on what they were doing before we got there.